going to do that. Okay. So what's happening is the process in the Spring Boot is if you write any basic code, a minimal code in Spring Boot, so it will actually, I will just write down like this. Okay, what happens in a Spring Boot code, REST API? If you write any REST API, what happens is you will specify like this. You will write a class. Okay, so you write a class name called as something. You'll write down any name, anything you write down. Maybe I'll write down it's the name of the class as called user controller. Okay, so then I will specify on top of it, I'll write specify annotations, that is REST controller. And everyone knows it, so I'll specify their REST controller. Okay, in the same way, I'll specify another annotation called what? Request mapping. So request mapping will take a string here, API/users. Correct. So inside this, we will specify inside this controller class, we will actually do this. This is what happens here. So I have to import a package. So that's package is thing. Request mapping is something I do here. Inside this class, we write down some methods, right? Get all users, some method I'll specify. So this method will have what? So let's say I write down here public. Okay, so this will have a return type as this list class. It is generic class. Inside this, I'll take whatever class object I want to take it. Then I have to specify a class user there. So then only it will work here. Okay, so I have to specify a class user. So then I have to take list class, and this also would be having name as annotations. That annotations I will write is add get mapping. Inside this get mapping, we will specify some string. Yes or no, guys? Okay. Now tell me what's happened this here. What happens here is that when you write your entry point main, it will go to Spring Boot annotations. That will scan the other annotations, REST controller, services, repository, and everything, and register inside the application context. Now, if you want to go in depth, what happens inside that also I can demonstrate, but the thing is, it is all your curiosity, guys. It's all people curiosity. So I'm trying to explain in depth what's happening. That is also. Then we will talk about now. We'll talk about exactly. We will talk about exactly what happens inside your. I mean your. You can see. So we will see actually what is the next thing is. Okay, so most of them people will ask you this called Java persistence API, and they'll ask about Hibernate. So Hibernate is it's a frame. It's part of it's an implementation of the framework, and this is a standard Java ORM, right? We all know that, correct? It's a Java ORM that we can, yes, we can do that, but it has a lot of annotations, and Hibernate also supports the other annotations, right? Now, what I'm trying to give is that for a basic developer, now here, I'm going to talk about some of the largest problems you will face in the real world. That is your query problem, right? Have you ever anyone faced this problem in your real time called N+1 problem? Hello?
Yes, yeah.
So what is this problem? Can anyone tell me what kind of problem have you faced in the real world?
Okay, so this problem is like when a parent entity has a many child,
Hmm.
and when we are getting the child, so it the call is to the DBs one by one
Hmm.
when there is, yeah.
Suppose you query one parent entity, and for each parent it runs one extra query to fetch its child, right? So for each query it will run extra one query, it's also changed. So it becomes what n plus total queries. Suppose if I do here one single query, auth report.find all, then it will return your list object which takes author thing. Then you loop it. Then again when you write author dot get books, then there is one more query for each n query will happen for each author, right? So this problem, how do we solve in Spring Boot? This is the biggest problem that we face, right? So how do we solve this problem in real world? So we generally use for this kind of problems in real world, we use something called Spring Data JPA version is there. So that is, we use something where you will use all the find all with, I mean, we have a advanced approach where we can do in the Hibernate batch wise large data you can fetch, or you can store in this real world use cases. Okay. So that is one problem you guys would have faced it. So the second problem is what? DB internal isolation level logs. So what about isolation levels? Maybe sometimes problem can happen because non-repeatable read or sometimes dirty read. So sometimes we get isolation levels of DB logs, right? So why when DB log happens, right? Anyone tell me? Hello? When the DB lock can happen in Spring. Okay, so listen carefully. So mostly there is a lock that in DB that will prevent data corruption. Remember that. Because when multiple transaction occur same time in Spring, the database lock can be there. Okay. That locks that row to be prevent others from reading or writing. Okay, assume no conflict but detect changes. That's what happens. So for that optimistic locking in Spring Boot, that's why when we update Hibernate checks if the version matches. For that, for optimistic, we use something called at versioning. Correct? So why at versioning we use in Spring is to versioning that someone else has updated it. So there is optimistic lock is thrown some kind of error. That is why we perform optimistic locking, and that optimizing locking is the way the behavior will lock that data and we access it. Correct? This is a one more real world problem we come across in Spring. Yes or no, guys? Hello, all the smiling coders. So this is all the real-time case studies which I have demonstrated detailedly. Now I'll talk about a real-world case study, ticket booking also. If you go take a ticket booking scenario, if there are two threads running at same time and both see the same tickets available, when they both the book, what will happen? So only one person will get that, right? So that's where we use locking mechanism to find, and if there is we find the log by ID, and if that is out of stock or the ticket is not available, then we do that. That is how we I use this optimistic lock modes. That can be optimistic or optimistic force in or some kind of modes we do. Clear or not, smiling coders?